Are you communicating with me?
Chris Farley was chaos, comedy, and charisma, wrapped in one unforgettable force of nature. From the riotous charm of Tommy Boy to the outrageous antics of Black Sheep, he dominated screens with unmatched energy. But behind the laughter was a personal battle that echoed the tragic path of his idol John Belushi. Though his life was heartbreakingly short, his impact, and his paychecks, left a lasting mark on Hollywood. Let's take a look at Chris Farley's earnings across 10 films. What if just 1 minute on screen could steal an entire movie? Chris Farley's first film role came in Wayne's World, and though he only appears for a fleeting moment, his presence was unforgettable. Dressed as a security guard at an Alice Cooper concert, he rattles off some oddly specific details about a record exec's travel plans.
Next stop is St. Louis, and he's gonna come back through Chicago on his way to Detroit.
It's a throwaway line, until it isn't. And Farley delivers it with such earnest intensity, it's impossible not to laugh. But behind that moment, pure nerves. Director Penelope Spheris later recalled being warned by Lorne Michaels, "He's really afraid of the camera." Farley was shy, uncertain, the opposite of the loud, larger-than-life persona he'd become known for. And yet, even in this tiny part, you could already see it. The timing, the charisma, the spark. Chris didn't just enter the world of film. He burst through, one awkward, glorious cameo at a time. What happens when an alien love story meets small-town America? And Chris Farley. In Coneheads, a quirky spin-off from a classic SNL sketch, Farley plays Ronnie, a bashful mechanic who falls for the cone-headed couple's human-raised daughter, Connie.
You know, I've never dated a girl taller than me before.
Oh, really? I've always been tall.
Unlike his usual wild, physical comedy, this role let Farley show a softer side. Shy, respectful, and smitten, Ronnie wasn't the Farley most fans were used to, and that's what made it work. Set against the absurdity of aliens pretending to be French in suburban New Jersey, Ronnie's awkward charm feels oddly grounding. His scenes with Connie are sweet and low-key, a rare, wholesome performance that hinted at the vulnerability behind Farley's boisterous on-screen persona. In a film filled with bizarre head shapes and sci-fi silliness, Farley stood out by keeping it simple. Sometimes, the funniest man in the room just needs to play the guy next door. In Airheads, Chris Farley doesn't headline. He barely even gets a name. But as Officer Wilson, a long-haired, no-nonsense cop with a soft spot for his fellow music lovers,
Establish contact, make sure it's not a false alarm. I know the procedure.
Farley turns a supporting role into a series of unforgettable moments. Whether it's getting his ponytail ripped out or force-feeding a rude club employee his own parking ticket, he brings that classic Farley rage. Explosive, physical, and somehow still lovable. This was peak 90s slacker comedy, with Brendan Fraser, Steve Buscemi, and Adam Sandler as wannabe rock stars who hijack a radio station. Amid all the chaos, Farley's cop becomes the unlikely hero we didn't know we needed. Absurd, intense, and always 1 inch from a meltdown. He didn't need the lead, he just needed a moment, and he took everyone. What happens when a fat guy in a little coat becomes the heart of a generation? Tommy Boy wasn't just Chris Farley's first leading role. It was the film that defined him. Released in 1995 and directed by Peter Siegel, this road trip comedy paired Farley with his SNL counterpart David Spade, casting them as mismatched partners trying to save a struggling brake pad company.
What'd you do?
Farley plays Tommy Callahan, a lovable man-child who inherits his father's business after his sudden death and must grow up fast to keep it afloat. Farley was chaos in motion, slamming into tables, flubbing sales pitches, and screaming with wild abandon. But beneath all the pratfalls was something real: vulnerability, heart, and desperation to make his father proud. Tommy wasn't just a clown, he was the soul of the film. Despite earning only $32.7 million on a $20 million budget and being trashed by critics, Roger Ebert famously hated it, Tommy Boy became a cult classic. Farley's $2 million paycheck was a small price for one of the most memorable comedic performances of the 90s. The film wasn't about car parts, and it was about finding purpose through failure. And Chris, he didn't just play Tommy, he was Tommy. After Tommy Boy's success, Paramount rushed Chris Farley and David Spade back on the road with Black Sheep, a political slapstick comedy where Farley plays Mike Donnelly, a well-meaning disaster magnate whose antics threaten his brother's campaign for governor.
Al Donnelly's a guy with a dream. His dream is to become governor of this great state of Washington. Hell, every guy's got his dream, am I right?
To contain the chaos, Spade's uptight aide is sent to babysit him, launching another misadventure filled with Farley's signature pratfalls and shouting fits. But behind the scenes, things were far from smooth. Farley had doubts about the script and only signed on after Spade's insistence. Director Penelope Spheris didn't hide her distaste either, famously saying, "I don't think I've ever even smiled at anything David Spade's ever done." Still, Black Sheep gave Farley a $6 million paycheck and added another starring role to his short but explosive filmography. While it lacked the heart and spark of Tommy Boy, fans still embraced Farley's lovable wreck of a character. It wasn't perfect, but even in a film plagued by studio pressure and behind-the-scenes tension, Chris Farley's chaotic charm couldn't help but shine through. In Beverly Hills Ninja, Chris Farley finally stepped out solo. No David Spade, no sidekick, just Farley front and center. He plays Haru, a bumbling orphan raised by a secret ninja clan, sent to America on a mission way beyond his skill level. Think, fish out of water, but with flying kicks, bad disguises, and a lot of crashing through windows.
You see, my identity must remain mysterious and my mission secret. I cannot reveal it to you.
Farley reportedly turned the film down several times, only accepting after a $6 million offer. The result? A whirlwind of slapstick chaos and wild-eyed sincerity that critics didn't exactly love. One review quipped that when the script ran dry, they just had Farley walk into a lamppost. And yet, somehow, it worked. It was his final film released before his passing. Not a masterpiece, but a perfect capsule of what made Farley special. Even Christian Bale once called it his favorite movie, admitting he laughed until he cried. That's the Farley effect. What if your final role was a wild race against Lewis and Clark, and your real battle was happening off-screen? Almost Heroes was Chris Farley's last starring role, released months after his death in late 1997. Set in the early 1800s, the film pairs Farley with Friends star Matthew Perry as bumbling explorers desperate to beat Lewis and Clark to the Pacific.
Yes, that's a very amusing story.
Tell him the ending. That's the best part.
It's historical fiction by way of slapstick, with Farley as the earnest, blundering Bartholomew Hunt crashing his way through the American wilderness. The film flopped with critics, a brutal 5% on Rotten Tomatoes, but earned warmer reception from audiences. And for fans, it remains a bittersweet farewell. Behind the scenes, Perry was also struggling with addiction. Years later, he revealed he was high during the entire press tour and devastated by Farley's death, even punching a hole in Jennifer Aniston's dressing room wall upon hearing the news. It's not Farley's finest film, but it's a testament to his ability to bring heart and chaos into any role, even as his personal storm raged. In the end, Almost Heroes became exactly that. Two men lost in a world that never quite let them rest. Dirty Work, released just months after Chris Farley's death, features him in a small but unforgettable role. A furious, nose-mangled bartender with an axe to grind over a Saigon sex worker incident gone horribly wrong.
Well, we meet again. Nosebiter!
It's Farley in full chaotic mode. Loud, sweaty, explosive, and painfully funny. Even under facial prosthetics, he's a scene stealer, barking lines with manic energy and barely holding it all together, which, in a way, made it all the more real. Behind the laughter, though, you could see the toll. Shot in summer 1997, the film shows a visibly struggling Farley, heavier, hoarse, and shining with sweat. Just months later, he'd return to host SNL, openly acknowledging his substance battles in a monologue that now feels like a farewell. Dirty Work, directed by Bob Saget and starring Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang, was rough around the edges, but Farley's appearance remains one of its rawest gems. It's a comedy cameo, sure, but more than that, it's a glimpse of a comic genius burning bright and burning out. Chris Farley brought in over $23.1 million in paychecks during his short but electric film career. His movies had a combined budget of $212.2 million, and yet they pulled in a staggering $422.4 million at the box office. By the time of his tragic death in 1997, his net worth stood at around $5 million. But those numbers only tell part of the story. Farley was more than his earnings. He was a raw, unfiltered genius of comedy. He had so many more roles to play, so many more movies to make. It's surreal and heartbreaking to think about the work that never got to be, lost to addiction and a body pushed to its limits. Despite pleas from friends and a final bittersweet appearance on SNL with Chevy Chase, Farley's demons caught up with him. At just 33, he left the world, leaving behind both roaring laughter and an aching silence. Which of his movies meant the most to you? Share your memories in the comments. And if this tribute resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Because we're not done telling the stories of the stars who changed Hollywood forever.